Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello,
Hi,
yes. Mhm.
Hi,
good
great.
afternoon.
Good afternoon. So, shall we begin?
Yes, sure, sure.
Mhm.
Great. So, Nancy and Theja, right? Is that how
Yes.
you pronounce your name, Theja? Yeah,
Yes, Teja.
great. Great. So, it's how did you make this film? It seems in the middle of nowhere, beautiful, but with these, little boys who look so innocent and so pure. Uh, Tell me how you made it, who wrote the story, and how you went about it. And I imagine the infrastructure must have been very limiting for you, but you still managed to make the movie. So tell me the story behind it. And congratulations, by the way, it's a lovely film.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So, around 2022, I moved to London, to UK to study film. I was at the National Film and Television School. And so, I've lived, like, I've sort of gone abroad sporadically to make films once or twice, but it was my sort of first time moving abroad. And while I was in the UK, after a year passed and I was making films there, I think at that point I had a yearning to sort of make a film that was about, that takes place where I come from and something that reminds me of my childhood and the world I knew growing up. And so that, being away strangely sort of inspired me to write a film that was rooted to where I come from. And when I was thinking about writing about several things, you know, uh, when I was writing about things I wanted to make, um, I was reminded of a boy called Ade who used to live right not very far from where I live. It's just right next door. And in retrospect, I've always thought he lived a very interesting life and was surrounded by a very interesting family. And that sort of inspired me 20 years later to make a film about him. And so that's when I decided to write the script. Can you hear me? Sorry, just making sure before I.
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And so the character of Ade being reminded of the character of Ade sort of brought back all these memories, and I was very inspired to make this film. And so I started writing the beat sheet for the film. I was hesitant to write a script with dialogues because I knew I was going to be working with non-actors. We come from Nagaland, and the film industry is still at a very nascent stage, so we do not have a lot of actors available. And so I was quite aware of the fact that I might end up working with non-actors, and therefore I was just simply writing beat sheets. And to be honest, it was quite frankly one of the easiest scripts I've ever had to write because most of it was just cherry picking from the memories that I had, the experiences that I had, not just of the boy, but I sprinkled some of my own experiences in there. And so the whole script came quite comfortably, and I wrote the first draft of the beat sheet, and that was just that. I was happy with the film. I was happy with the beat sheet rather, and we were we went into production with the first draft. And yeah, Nagaland is a very tough place to shoot a film. Of course, there's so many, like, we have people who are always here ready to support us, and people who are so hospitable and are, very generous in lending their homes and a lot of their resources to us to make films. But, we don't have any camera equipment, and we don't have technical professionals. And so a lot of those we had to bring them from outside Nagaland. The camera came from Mumbai, and we had a lot of technicians coming from Mumbai, uh, Guwahati, and my DOP who goes to the same film school as I do. In fact, we both graduated now, but we were still in between our courses. And so he was kind enough to mm, fly in on his own, and then he we shot for 3 days on film, which makes it more challenging. But it was a film I felt that needed to be shot on film. There was a point I remember when we were struggling to get the camera for the film, and even the stocks, we weren't sure whether it was going to arrive on time. And I remember Nancy and the DOP as well suggesting, maybe we might have to shoot it on an Alexa. And I was quite sleepless around that time. But for me, I would have canceled the whole thing if, I couldn't shoot on film. I was very adamant, and it was a film, I think, that, film accommodates the story best because it has so much. It's not just the aesthetical reasons. There's so much nostalgia that is filled. There's so much memories that is filled into this film. And I wanted to basically write a love letter to the world I knew growing up. And I wanted to mimic the images that we still have on our photo albums. And so we managed to do that. And we send one big logistical problem was also sending the film stocks back to Bombay. We couldn't send them through the plane because we're always wary of the fact that if it gets scanned, then it might spoil the footage. And so we had to send it by train, and that's how we developed the film. And most of the entire post-production happened in the UK with international collaborators.
Wow, quite a journey.
Yeah.
Why were you so insistent on doing it on 16 mm? As you said, because of the nostalgia?
Yeah. I wanted to because I guess I'm part of the last generation that were able to sort of witness um the use of film and then the transition from film to digital. Although, um I have vague memories of it, but a lot of the childhood pictures that I still have in our photo albums are all shot on film, and we have them printed, and that is the world I knew and I remember. And so for me it was very important to replicate that feel and that image.
Right. Tell me a little about Ade. Is he still around? Did you meet him? Do you know where he is?
I know where he is. I've spoken to him. I haven't met him yet, but I'm meeting him around November, and I'm gonna show him the film. He's seen the trailer, um, and and yeah, he's very happy and excited to watch the film.
What
And
does he
yeah,
do? Is he the same age as you?
he's a bit younger than I am.
Okay.
And
What does he do?
so what does he do now?
Yeah.
Oh, he works in construction now.
Oh,
And it's
okay.
like I haven't met him in 20 years. And so I think it's a nice coming together, and, you know, hopefully with the success of the film and when I screen it to him, it's a sort of a circle that we sort of come back to. And I'm excited to meet him as well.
Yeah. I wonder what he'll think of the movie. And his mother and father, are they still around? Do you know?
No, his mother and father both passed away, and both alcohol problems. But when I wrote the
Right.
script, he was well aware of what I was writing, and although we
Right.
didn't meet, but he knew what I was writing. And Sunday, like the whole bit where he runs away from the Sunday school is also something that I did, and we would go
You
to
did?
swim. Yeah, that's something that I
Right.
did as well. Go to swim, and then the adults would chase us out because, um, yeah, because they don't want us to drown, or they don't want us to catch a cold,
Yeah.
or
So which is the film school that you graduated from, Teja?
oh, it's the National Film Television School, NFTS.
Oh, okay. And what does your family think about it?
Think about my film.
Yeah.
I think they really like it's their favorite film that I've done. Um,
Okay.
So I think because it is something that's closest to home as well. So I'm sure, they can connect to it, and
Yeah.
it's no surprise it resonates with them because Ade is also a boy, um a boy they knew. And quite an interesting story. This is something I've never told anyone yet, but I just remembered. This was something
Huh.
I put in the script, but this is, of course, when I say that was the only script that like the first draft was the film we ended up making.
Right.
Um, we did end up doing that, but because we only shot for 3 days, there was another additional scene or two
Right.
that I wanted, but I ended up we didn't have the time to shoot. And it's
Right.
basically based on this memory I have, and my so Ade's family, even around where I live, they were struggling as a family financially and even on a domestic level. And I remember once he was around and he was playing, and this was around December, right after the exams and the results have come out. And my mom saw him playing and then called him over and he said, "Oh, so, Ade, how are you doing? How did your exams go?" And he said, "Oh yeah, I did well." And my mom said, "You passed?" And he said, "Yeah, I passed. I got second. I got second in school." And he studies in a government school not too far. And my mom said, "Oh, you know what? I have something that belongs to Teja. I'll give it to you." And it's small for him. So my mom gave him a blazer. And then my mom said, "So how many people are in your class?" And he said, "There's two." So out of the two, he got second.
What a sweet story.
Yeah.
Lovely. So, Nancy, tell me about how you and Teja got together to make this wonderful film.
Oh, I've known Teja since he was a kid. I mean, we're
Okay.
sort of, yeah. Our family is a family friend, and I've known him since I was a kid. And he always had this way of telling stories in the most amusing way. I mean, I've known him since he was 7, so that's well, I feel like a dinosaur now, but like he always had a very interesting way of telling stories. And I liked how he would always talk about local stories. Like for me, I mean, like I was used to other kids talking about their school or talking about holiday they went to and they met somebody around people that he knew, like fact stories. But it wasn't local stories said in a way of like a local context. It was always stories that he would pick up as human interest stories that could anyways translate anywhere in the world. So when he said he wanted to become a filmmaker, I asked him, "Are you very, very sure you want to become a filmmaker?" He did his English majors and he did send me a couple of scripts when he was in university. Um, but then I said, okay, if you really want to become a filmmaker before you go into film school, you have to get through at least a film lab and understand, make a film there, work with filmmakers and understand whether you really want to do this or not. Because, I'm from the Northeast, I'm from Nagaland. And when I joined the film industry, everybody was like, oh, do you like nobody knew what film industry is, right? So in the Northeast, they only know media as you're a documentary filmmaker or you're a journalist. And I did do documentaries in the past and I enjoyed them. But when I told my parents I want to make films, films with actors, so my parents' first reaction is, but we don't have money. You're supposed to be very rich to make films. How will you become a filmmaker if you don't have money? I mean, like nobody knew about the industry. So even for me, I mean, it was quite distinct to advise Teja to join the film industry. I wanted him to get a taster of what the film industry is like before he actually dived deep into it. Um, he went to Sicily to do a film, this thing, and I think his first brush with filmmaking, I think he never looked back. I think he fell in love with it. I got a script almost every month from him saying, "I want to make this film. I want to make this film." It was just he was so passionate about storytelling that it was there right from the beginning. So we have collaborated at least on 4 or 5 projects. I've been a producer for most of his films, except the ones that he did in his university right now in London, NFTS. But all his other short films, including the one in Italy, because I was a consultant producer to all the film students then. So his first film also, I sort of I had to produce about 22 films then. So, but his first film as well, I was a producer then. So it's been a long association. With this particular script, what what really inspired me was like, I mean, like there are films that you see from around the world, but you never see a film made in your mother tongue. This film is also special to both of us and our families and everyone because it's in our mother tongue. There has never been a film made in Tenidia, which is our mother tongue. So, it became, and when he told me how he wants to, my biggest concern was how do we get children to act? Because when we worked on Ang, which was a film we made a few years ago, I mean, we worked with non-actors, but we had worked with slightly older people, and then we had a kid, but he was he was old enough to understand what was happening on set, and we were able to sort of train, practice with him, rehearse. But these kids were written as 7 to 9 year olds, and I was not I was a bit worried. But then he went to Nagaland, he did his casting. And the interesting story was the boy this time, he was cast basically purely based on his whistling skills. The casting video was like the video we saw of him was of him whistling this song, which we have put it in our film as well.
Yeah. Right.
So no, for me it was I've always believed in him. I've always believed in the stories that he wants to say. And I've always believed that stories from certain parts of India is never, showcased anywhere. And we are not trying to make something that is so local to a place, but it's like set a story locally, but tell a universal, but have a universal language to it. And I feel I've traveled to LA with this film, and everybody who has watched the film has come back and told me how they connected with the film. The place took them somewhere, like it was like nostalgia for them, for every one of them. And they really, really loved the boy. And the boy reminded them of their own childhood. Either they knew somebody like an Ade, or either they were Ade themselves. But yeah, production-wise, this was
Wonderful.
quite a challenge. This was quite a challenge, as Theja
Yes.
simply wouldn't shoot without the 16 mil. And it's very few people shoot on 16 mil in India anymore. So getting the film, getting the camera, having it processed, having these people travel up and down, get it processed somewhere, find another person who will do the scanning. Once it's scanned, then the post-production happened between Thailand and India and the UK. I mean, most of Theja's classmates participated, but we had a very very senior colorist from Thailand who sort of graded the film for us. But this film wouldn't have been possible without, the support of so many people, because nobody actually, the only money that we spend on the film was on the equipment and on the certain technicians that we had to have, like for the 16 mil. Everybody came on board the project just for making the film because they believed in the story.
Right. Did you really shoot for just 3 days, Nancy?
Yes, we only shot for 3 days. I mean, originally he wanted to shoot for 3 days. I wanted to let him shoot for 2 days, but like we shot, technically we shot about 2.5 days. Like we didn't even complete the third day completely.
And where exactly in Nagaland did you shoot?
This was in a small village about 20 kilometers, maybe under 20 kilometers from Kohima, called Puchama.
Called what, sorry?
Puchama. So it's spelled as P-F-U-C-H-A-M-A.
Puchama. And what is the dialect? Is it Naga, or is it
No,
another
this
dialect
is
of
Angami.
the language?
This is
Tenidia.
Tenidie.
Tenidie.
Yeah. Tenidie is a
Okay, so
dialect spoken by the Angamis, the Angami tribe.
right. So are Teja and you also from the Angami tribe?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, right. So I mean, it's amazing. So many wonderful things about this. Have you had a film made in this dialect before? Has
No.
anyone
Have
made a
I?
film in this dialect?
No, I don't think
Sorry?
anybody has made a. I mean, there are local films which are made in this dialect, but it's purely for local consumption. This would be the first film made in the language that traveled internationally and actually won an award. The rest
Or
of
to
the
any.
Wonderful.
films
Or-
are usually made within Nagaland for local people or by the government to send out some social message or something. But this would
Right.
be the first independent Tenidiya film that went out of Nagaland.
I went to a film festival, I think.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And do you have, sorry, yes, Teja, what you saying?
First film that would have gone to a film festival.
Right. And
Yeah.
do you have many theaters in Nagaland?
There's none in Kohima. Apparently, I think there are two being constructed right now. But as far as I'm aware, Dimapur, which is the other city in Nagaland, there's two of them there. So I think currently, if I'm not wrong, there's only two cinemas, but none in Kohima, which is the capital, and that's where me and Nancy are both from.
So, is there a film watching culture in Nagaland? Or do they watch it at home? Do they watch streaming? I mean, what is the culture of film going in Nagaland if there are no theaters?
Right. I think initially, though, this is also a very fond memory I have growing up. Not a, when I was growing up, this would have been the early 2000s. I don't I don't think a lot of people had televisions also at that time. So it's I
Right,
was fortunate to have a tele to grow up with, television in our house. So we would sometimes like we would often have like, a lot of neighbors who would come together. So it's, of course, it's not a theater, but it's still a collective experience. You have
right.
people coming together, neighbors. So you have, especially kids, there could be a dozen people cramped up in a small room or even more, just enjoying the film. But I think back in the day they did, but due to some, but I don't want to misquote anything because I'm not too sure about what the particular political problem was. But I think after the 80s, um, there was no cinemas in Kohima, and it's like I said, there's two under construction, so at least we're trying to rejuvenate that culture, I guess.
So they were like a very like Dimapur is the commercial city of Nagaland, while Kohima is the capital of Nagaland. I
Right.
remember because obviously I'm a decade older than Teja. So I remember there were cinemas. Um, Titanic played for I think over almost 2 years. So did
Really?
another. Yeah, yeah. It almost because there were theaters in Dimapur, but something happened which I'm not very aware of because I also moved to Delhi to study for school. But all the cinemas were shut, and then cinema is coming like has come back only in the last couple of years again. There was a lull period where there were no cinemas in Nagaland, unfortunately, for quite a while. There used to be a theater in Kohima which was owned by the Assam Rifles, and I think it
Right.
was mostly to entertain the Jawans, but also was open to public, I think. But that used to be, but they had a fire incident. I don't know the real story, but there was an incident and then they shut it down. Um, I grew up, I mean, like Teja said, we were both fortunate to have like, TV and cable connection. But I also grew up before the cable. So I I looked forward to Sundays when they would put regional film, which was usually black and white on Doordarshan. And
Right.
that was my exposure to cinema first. So
Right.
people around my neighborhood would come to watch those films because they used to show Manipuri and Assamese film. And for us, we
Right.
look slightly similar, right? So it's also a way of seeing ourselves on big screen. So regional
Right.
cinema was as big as, let's say, Bollywood film. What is very interesting in Nagaland when I grew up was like every day there was a man who lived next to our house. Every day he had a cassette, not the VHS, but a cassette of the entire film. So I know most of the Sholay dialogues because of him. Every day without fail, 5 o'clock, he would put the Sholay tape, and the whole locality basically heard the Sholay dialogues. And nobody knew what the film looked like, by the way. Um,
What a great memory.
yeah, yeah. And I also remember like we had a color television, but I went to one of my cousin's house and they had a black and white this thing. And being a bratty child I was just like, what is this? I don't want to watch this. There's no color. So this cousin of mine went out and got me this glasses made of paper with tinted, you get those tinted plastic sheets, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
instead of black and white, I watched the whole film in green color.
Do you remember which film it was?
I can't remember. I think it was one of those I can't remember, but it was one of those films which used to have a lot of comedy. And I remember there was this character which was a those days films would have this I don't know what is the right word to say it, but dwarfs, like short people who would
Yeah, yeah,
always
yeah.
pretend like a child, but they also do all that comedy. And I remember that because I was cranky, they played the TV and I was made to watch that. And I remember just watching the film in green. And then I think I was given the red one as well so that I can then see a different color. But those are my memories of watching my first films.
Wow. And Teja, your memory of watching your first film?
Oh, I remember it very vividly. It's Baby's Day Out, and I
Oh,
cried because I wanted the baby to go back to his mother.
how old were you?
I don't even know. This would have been the late 90s, but I think, I remember it because this is something that is sort of that is often narrated in our house as well. But it was around the time when I think when I was growing up, we used to do a lot of VCD rentals. So you would
Yeah,
go
yeah.
and rent around that time. I think it was around 10 rupees. You could rent it for a day and then take it back. And I don't know who rented Baby's Day Out, and yeah, made me cry.
Yeah. I
So what are
also
your
lived
plans now, Teja? Sorry, you were
Yeah,
saying,
sorry.
Nancy?
I was wanted to just add. I also lived below one of the biggest at that point VHS rental house. So I would spend, because I was only allowed to watch like certain films. We had a VHS tape. But I remember coming back from school, not going home, and just walking to that store and just looking at all the VHS tapes, the posters of the film. I was so mesmerized by the fact that 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 somebody makes this, and it was, for me it was like such an important, and the cassette, the VHS house used to be called Mayfair. For some reason it was called Mayfair. And until
Mayfair.
today I yeah until today when I give directions to my house, I always tell them, oh, do you know where Mayfair is? It's not doesn't exist anymore. But like that was my thing, that I lived below Mayfair.
What a wonderful memory. So, I mean, it's a no-brainer. Both of you would have ended up in the movies in some way. I think it's so much of cinema around you, despite not, despite not having such a film culture, right? In the state.
Yeah, we were
Yeah.
the odd ones out, I think, in our society.
Lovely. So, Teja, what are your plans now? Do you plan to stay on in London or do you plan to return? And what do you plan to do now?
So I'm currently in Nagaland. I just arrived 30 minutes ago from Mami. So it was a long, long journey. Anyways, I am back here for the rest of the year and till the early parts of next year because we're scheduled to shoot my first feature that is going to start production around the last week of February. And so we're, currently in the middle of pre-production and slowly things are beginning to pick up. But yeah, so I should be here for I think a good couple of months at least.
And is Nancy producing that as well? Nancy, are you
Yeah.
producing that?
Yes, I am.
Can you tell me a little more about it? Is it again a local story that you're telling?
Yes, it is. So to give you a bit of a background, in the rural parts of Nagaland, in the more eastern part of Nagaland, which borders Burma, there's a certain tribe called the Konyaks. And there are
Right,
a lot
of
of
course.
Naga tribes that use
They call the
practice.
headhunters or whatever,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, and with tattoos on their face. So you don't get tattoos on your
yeah.
face unless you cut off heads, right? And so this film follows an Ang, who is Ang means chief in Konyak. So it follows an Ang and his son who remain the last people in the region to convert to Christianity. So it's the two of them persevering, holding on to their age-old traditions, while they've been abandoned by their own villagers, and everyone has sort of moved on to another place and sort of Christianity they've converted to Christianity. And it's the two of them living alone in their village, trying to hold on to their age-old traditions. And the film begins when an American missionary arrives to the region and is beginning to baptize people. They've already converted, they already formed a new village, but now, people are beginning to baptize. And yes, so I guess it's about these two characters who are holding on to their culture.
Is it based, is it a contemporary film or is it a period
Oh,
film?
sorry, it's set in the
Mhm.
1960s. I forgot to mention.
Right.
It's set in the
So,
1960s, and for some information, the last headhunting was recorded in the 1970s, but mass conversion already happened around the 30s and the 40s, and so
right,
it takes place after the mass conversion has already happened.
right.
And
And
shooting this
these
on
again are
16
non-actors. Sorry. Yeah. Tell me,
shooting this
Nancy.
again on we are shooting this again on 16 millimeters.
Mm.
So that's like
Oh no,
another
he doesn't make it easy for you, right?
doesn't make it easy. Doesn't make it easy at all.
And Teja, again, do you have
Yes.
non-actors or have you got trained
Yes.
actors?
So we haven't confirmed all casts yet, but it looks like it appears that we're gonna be working with non-actors, not entirely, because we're looking for an actor to play the American missionary. So, of course,
Right.
that has to be a person coming from abroad, and we're gonna be looking for an actor who can play that. But all the local casts will be non-actors.
Wow. I can't wait to watch it. Why do you call that your first feature? Why not Ade?
So around 2019, I made a short film version of Ang, and we were fortunate to have a very successful film festival run. The film premiered at Claremont International Film Festival and won a special mention jury award there, and then went on to play IFLA, Palm Springs, Melbourne, and I guess that was the first film that I made that was successful in the international film festival circuit as well. And I began developing that around lockdown, and this was pre-film school. And I think the successful film festival journey that it's had, plus um, also how unique this story is, yeah, I think that has helped the film, get financed, and then now, yeah.
Right,
So but it's a story I've been sitting with and I've developed for quite a while Ade remains quite fresh.
right. So, but it would technically be your second feature.
No,
Oh,
featured are anything over 90. A feature film has to be over 90 minutes.
Okay.
the
And
first
Ade
one.
is right.
Ade is the short film.
Right. Okay. Great. Sorry. My apologies.
No, no,
So,
no, no.
yeah. So great. It's been great speaking to you, and really, I do look forward to what you come up with next because it's quite fascinating what you've done with this, and I do hope that there's a film culture that develops in Nagaland with movies like yours and with people like you who really step up and contribute to your cinema, your culture, and keeping it alive. I think that's very important. Thank you so much, both of you. And I do
Thank you
wish
so much,
you
Sid.
all the best. And
Thank
I
you
do
so
hope you
much.
keep in touch and let me know when the second one finally happens. Yeah. I mean, the first feature finally happens.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
Thank you
for your
so
time.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Bye bye.